but I think there's often a disconnect because people don't know how to express themselves. And when I've had the opportunity to speak with Black women, um, I often said, no one's trying to, because I think people think that we're trying to compete with women for mates, spouses, whatever. And
Mhm.
to me, or for me, a man who wants to be with a trans woman wants to be with a trans woman. He can be
Mhm.
attracted to women in general, but he wants to be with a trans woman for a particular reason. And so we're not uh, battling you out for men. We're not, in competition, in my opinion. I often like to tell Black women, I admire you so much that I became you. So
Mhm.
I'm here to be in the fight with you. You know, um, a lot of people would say that in the hierarchy of the human race, the Black woman's, the Black woman's on the bottom of the pile. So why would
Mhm.
I make the choice to move myself to the bottom of the pile? And the reason I say I do make that choice is because I know I want to be strong enough with the being on this planet that supports everything else. And that's the Black.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
strongest person I've ever known in my life have always been Black women. That's physically, mentally, spiritually. And that's what I
Mhm.
want.
Well, that it's wonderful that you are a great example of and like I keep saying, an inspiration to us all because you've been there and you're still there and you're still educating and helping. And this is an amazing thing. And so hopefully somewhere down the line, the young people will watch this video 100 years from now and say, she really made sense. She's talking the way I feel, how I live my life. And this is what we want people to see, that we live everyday lives just like them. They just try to, like you say, sexualize it. And this is something that, yes, we have sex, but don't you have sex as well?
Yeah, I think that if television and media showed more aspects of people in general, and I hate to break things down upon racial lines, but I think that's the easiest way to explain it. You can turn on the television show or on the TV right now, and by chance, you'll just flipping channels, you'll come across depictions of Caucasian families on pretty much every channel. And then after
Hmm.
a while, when you get to certain stations like UPN or whatnot, you might come across a Black family. But then again, very rarely do you come across Asian families. Do you come across Native American families? I don't think I've ever seen a depiction of a Native American family ever on a television show,
Hmm.
you know. And then you can get, break it down, to, just anything, Jewish family, so on and so forth. So I think that being a creative person such as myself and being able to travel and express myself through travel and taking pictures of things to express that, I wish that I could hopefully inspire uh, those who write and produce those shows to produce more
Hmm.
shows that involve people like me doing very ordinary things that everyone else does. Because it's not extraordinary. I didn't do anything, that moved mountains. I went online, I ordered a flight, I flew over to Hawaii to visit my son and stayed in his home, walked around his neighborhood, got to see mangoes on trees that were this big and avocados that
Oh.
weighed 2 pounds. And no one thought anything. I mean, everyone was, hi, how are you today, ma'am? Every Uber driver. And it's not about being respectful. I think they just called me what they saw. I often tell people,
Hmm.
sometimes people discover you're trans, they all of a sudden say, well, what would I call you, ma'am or sir? I'm like, well, what? Call me what you see, you know?
Hmm.
So I think that if
That.
we
Go
if
ahead.
we're
I'm
able to
sorry.
if we're able to see more positive lifestyles, we'll understand. Quickly I'll say this. It reminds me of when the Cosby show came out and my Caucasian friends and some Black families were saying it was unrealistic. And I'm like, but why was it unrealistic? It was realistic for me, coming from an upper middle class family whose family members, worked as nurses or doctors or lawyers or were in the military, you know. But yet when they do a depiction of, say, a family being depicted on the movies Friday After Next, well, that's realistic. That wasn't realistic for
Hmm.
me. I didn't grow up in the hood or the ghetto or whatever kind of, negative connotation people want to say. So if there's any producers that are ever watching this, hey, if you want to make a movie or a reality show about trans women being trans women, not involved in the glamour world, not involved in drag, but just day to day, everyday life, I'm available.
You know, it's funny. I love watching the show Red Fox, and he did an episode where he was having a toothache and he had to go to the dentist. And
Hmm.
he, the man that came out to fix his teeth was black. I mean, was white. And he was asking him all kinds of questions, this and that, and this and that. And he didn't want him working on his teeth. He says, I want somebody that's been in the business a long time. And in other words, he was trying to say that he wasn't qualified to work on his mouth. And he wanted the head of the surgery department to look at his mouth and everything. I'm sorry, the person was black. So they sent in a white assistant to overall access him. And then he says, well, I don't think that I'm qualified. After looking at his feet, he said, I don't think I'm qualified to fix your tooth. I will call the head of surgery to do it. And in comes the same black man that came out the first time to look at his tooth. And he just sort of went, oh, how you doing, brother? It was a
I
very
think it
funny.
boils down to perception. You know, I'm thankful that my parents taught me that we could be anything we wanted to be. And the one
Mhm,
thing I can remember my dad saying as well, I was a young child was never be the stereotype. You can be anything you
mhm,
want to be, but never be the stereotype. Never be what they want you to be or what they expect you to be. Always, go past their expectations, whoever they were, you know.
mhm.
And that's what I've always championed myself to be, more than your expectation.
Mhm. So, on that note, how was your vacation? How was it overall?
My vacation is always lovely. We did a lot of outdoor things. There were a few times we just stayed in the house and laid in bed and watched Netflix and just vacationed or just, commensurated together. My sister and I, it was our first trip there. If you've never been to Hawaii, go. It's a unique experience in and of itself. From the little things, just from the trees, the
Mhm.
flora and fauna that you see, they just don't exist anywhere else. Um, my sister was out on the patio one day or on the veranda on the balcony, and she's like, girl, come here, girl, come here, come here, come here. And she was excited. And so I ran to see what she was. She goes, girl, look. And I said, what? She goes, you don't see them parrots? I say, yeah, it's just parrots flying around here. I say, well, parrots are their natural birds, like how in Texas y'all have crows and in Phoenix we have pigeons. You know, have you noticed that you don't see any crows here? She's like, oh, I didn't notice that. I said, because their normal birds are parrots and macaws, and they have a variety of pigeon and other birds that are just normal and natural to the islands. And being that the islands are
Mhm,
so far from the mainland, those birds aren't, built to fly, thousands of miles to get to the next place over. So they're just here. And
mhm.
she noticed it when we're driving around the city. Ivies and plants that probably people have in their houses right now, those leaves are 2 foot wide and 4 feet long. And it's the
Oh,
exact same ivy that you would probably have growing in your house. But out there, it's just outdoor vegetation. It's literally a lush tropical oasis. And just little
mhm.
things like that were interesting. Coming across, she'd never seen mangoes on the tree. She had never seen a macadamia nut tree before, you know,
Oh,
and and people's neighborhoods, they had macadamias that were just all on the ground, and people weren't, cars were running over them. They're not trying out there and pick them up. That's an expensive nut. And I explained to her, it's no different than in Texas when people have pecans all over the ground they're not picking up. You know,
mhm,
it's just a different situation. So it was fun to share my version of paradise with her and for her to find her very own version of paradise herself.
well, you know, I always say the good thing about all of this is the fact that trans women now are free to go out into society, to try and work, try to do things that they've been looking to do for centuries. Work, integrate into society, whether or not it's good or bad, you got to get out there. You got to get out
I
there.
think for so long as a trans woman, people were suppressed to living in a particular lifestyle and or way. Being concerned about your travel documents or your identification documents in order to um, get those jobs to work. A lot of times, a lot of trans women were relegated to either sex work or being an entertainer or both, because that was all that was
Mhm.
available to them. You could look exactly like Diana Ross, but if your name was Dwayne, you weren't necessarily going to get hired someplace, and you didn't have
That's
the
true.
resources to change your name legally back then. You didn't know how that worked. So therefore, you just lived and died on the fringes, honestly, of the LGBTQI plus community, because we were not always accepted as part of that community. I think the last time I spoke with you, I referenced it as a trans woman, we are the unicorn. We are not really
Mhm.
accepted into the gay community, and we're not really accepted into the straight community or the community at large. So we oftentimes congregate amongst ourselves. And I think that has a lot to do with how houses are made or drag mothers are made. And I'm the matriarch of a drag house as well as a home in general for those who fall by the wayside.
Mhm. Now, I want to say this in closing. Um, I'm working on a new show now, where I want to talk to trans women about the end of their lives, end of our lives, and how people perceive you when they see you, whether you're being cremated or whether you're being, seen in a casket. Now, I went to a funeral, and this entertainer was trans, but they buried her as Michael Jackson. I understood the entertainment part, but I didn't understand why they did that. So I'm working on the show so we can talk about the end of trans lives, how they go, how they leave this earth, and how their families or their friends or their community perceives them to look when they see them in their final, resting.
I think that people want to see you as you were and as they know you. Um, most of the time when people in the community see me, they see me typically at a bar at a show. So I am dolled
Mhm,
up. I am looking glamorous to them. I've experienced multiple of my trans sisters passing, and due to legality or legal reasons, their families, who they've been oftentimes estranged from, are the only people who can legally come back and claim their bodies. And
mhm,
for whatever reason, I've seen them shave their heads, bury them as men, so on and so forth. So I think what we need to do while we're awake is take better note of our final thoughts and wishes. With a living will, which you can do through
mhm,
most LGBTQI plus community centers, will help you do a living will. You can do that for most places free of charge. You can put someone in charge of your home, your apartment, your bank accounts, your drag, your
mhm,
anything that you own, so that your family, you know by blood, can't just come in and disturb what you've gotten. I've had friends who've been married in partnerships for 20 years prior to marriage becoming legal. And one spouse dies, their family comes in and shuts the other person out who spent 20, 30 years with them, you know. And now
mhm,
they're destitute because the family's like, well, it was in his name, it's his things. So I
mhm.
think it's very important for anyone, trans